Hey, and welcome back to Slick Willy Fly. So what are we going to do today? Today we're going to do this, the Slick Willy Tarpon Bunny. And it's called the Tarpon Bunny because we use rabbit zonker strips. Now, this fly is one of those flies that if you were to search essential saltwater flies, this makes a lot of lists. Here's a orange and black version. This is actually called natural fox. This is all rabbit fur and not exactly the same size, but they have the same style and will definitely be good for the same species. So what am I putting in the vise? I'm putting in a mustad hook, size 3/0. It is the 34007 from Mustad. Great hook. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of lead thread on this hook because I don't want it to, I don't want the fly to sit on the surface. So I'm using this flat lead. It's not actually lead thread. And can't really tell you how many wraps I'm doing. Just gonna give it a good amount of lead because I want this fly to not sit on the surface. I promise you that this is not enough lead to make this thing sink like a stone, but it will sink. Now, rabbit zonker is a material that it needs to get wet in order to start to really sink. So keep that in mind. Now I like to put on my thread while the super glue isn't exactly dry yet. I think it helps just lock everything in. For thread right now I'm using Vivus 6.0. And I'm using white. I think the white's gonna go good with the Chartreuse when we make the head. You saw on this particular fly, I have red on the end. And on this orange one, I went with black thread. So it's just your imagination and what colors you think look good. Like all my Slick Willy flies. You know, I'm not the guy that, like, when I tie flies that I think look good. I'm not tying, necessarily by the book, if you will. Like when I tie a nymph, a lot of times people will criticize my nymphs and say, "Oh, that's not a nymph. That's not a pheasant tail, or that's not a hare's ear." No, I mean, I agree. It's not the traditional, pheasant tail or hare's ear that every single person ties. But I promise you that it's a pheasant tail or a hare's ear or whatever that has caught some fish. Because I won't do a video of a fly that hasn't caught fish. That's just seems like a waste of time to me. So all I'm doing here, I put a little bit of Crystal Flash, 2 strands, and it's black and silver. And I'm gonna go ahead and just trim them up to about a little bit more than an inch. Now I'm gonna get a little bit of Zonker. And normally, I don't like, you've seen me 1,000 times. I really don't like super long tails. But this fly needs to have a little bit of a tail. So I take the Zonker, I spread open the material, and then I try to cut just the skin, not cutting any fur at all. And that is pretty much how you cut Zonker. So this particular Zonker comes with the skin already dyed pretty good dark green, so that's perfect. I don't need to think about the bottom. So all I'm gonna do is Imagine my length. Divide up the fur like we spoke about. I come in here and give this a couple of wraps. Make sure that I'm sitting where I want to sit. The length looks good. And now I'm just going to lock this thing in hard. I don't really need to trim anything off here. It's all going to get covered up anyway. All right. So now I've done my flash and I've done my tail. So now I got to think about the body. For the body, what I do is I go back to the strip and I find a nice section of the fur, and I try to, sometimes you have to moisten your finger. I just try to straighten it out a little. Just like that. Then I come in with a material clip. Got a little Zonker in my mouth there. And I try to capture the material, just the fur, as close to that leather skin as possible. Then I come in with my scissor. You want to take the longest scissor possible. And I try to cut just under the skin. I know that you can't see this. I'll show you what it looks like in the clip in a second. Okay, so when I'm done cutting, it looks just like this. And this is actually came out really nice, and it's going to be perfect in a dubbing loop. So now what do? Now I got to make a dubbing loop. And now I get my thread forward and out of the way. Take the, I have a bigger spinner somewhere, but I don't see it right now. So I'm going to take the material. I'm going to carefully insert it into the dubbing loop. And you can get creative here. You can mix and match colors. You can put additional flash in. All I'm trying to do is just spin this up nice and tight, just like that. Give it a little bit better spin. I like that. And now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to untrap some of these fibers that are trapped. And you don't have to worry if some of it falls off. It's okay. You have lots and lots of rabbit fur on this dubbing loop. I think I mentioned that for thread I'm using 6.0 Vivas. I like to use a good strong thread, like 100 denier. 6.0 is about as small as I'll go, because I wanna be able to crank down on this fly. All right. So once I have it fluffed out, I try to draw it all to the back. Then I use the rotary function and carefully avoiding the point of the hook, I start wrapping the hook shank. Now, rabbit zonker is a material that you can buy in a lot of different sizes. I tend to not buy big sizes. Depending on how big you want this fly to look, that determines what size you're gonna buy. I don't tend to buy the super big Zonkers, just so you know. So if you're looking at my fly, this one that I'm using right now is 3mm. To give you an idea, I mean, I think that's about as small as it comes. So now I'm just gonna capture the dubbing loop nice and hard. Super easy to capture it when you have the whole front wide open. And now I could trim off my dubbing loop, and notice that I never cut on the same side as the thread bobbin. So now I have some decisions to make. I actually think that I'm going to change color thread. So I'm going to give this a little whip finish. Cut off the white. I could have actually used a different colored thread from the start. Probably would have been easier, but that's alright. Only takes a second to change thread. I'm gonna go for this yellow. I think this yellow is gonna look good. Take a second to change. All I'm gonna do is dress up the head, and then we're gonna put some eyes on this fly. And this actually will give me a chance to show you another tip. Ooh, don't want to do that. Right, let's cut off this tag. A lot of times when I'm changing color threads, I can't really see if I really did a good job of getting good coverage. So a lot of times what I do is I'll get my UV lamp out, and it's amazing how the white glows, and the UV lamp will show me. See, I don't know if you can see that in the video or not, but it shows clearly the areas that I haven't covered nicely with this yellow thread. I think we're getting pretty close though. I think we're getting close to having good coverage. A couple of wild hairs, that's another thing. You know, I can't even see the wild hairs with the naked eye, but the UV lamp shows them. All right, now I got coverage. So now we're gonna put in a final whip finish. Then we're gonna get some eyes. I mean, this is a super simple tie. I don't know how long I've actually been tying, but imagine if I would have started with yellow from the beginning. I probably wasted a few minutes just changing color. Now, I forgot to mention, what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking my needle and untrapping any fibers that might have got trapped when I was wrapping the body. So it'll look nice and fluffy. This fly is looking super sharp. I'm gonna get my little vacuum cleaner out. And now we're gonna get some eyes. I think we're gonna go with silver. All right, so how do I apply the eye? Well, super simple. First thing I do is I put a drop, gotta work a little quick here, put a drop of UV resin on the shank. Pop out an eye. These are big enough that I can generally work with my fingers and set it on that shank up against the fur using the center of the eye and lining it up with the hook shank. And now I'm just locking it in hard, which only takes a couple seconds. And we go to the opposite side and reverse the process. You know, this particular fly, I'm guessing that the people who mostly tie this fly are probably chasing tarpon. But I promise you that this fly is equally at home on snook, trout, jacks. I imagine if you're fishing in fresh water that, I mean, a largemouth bass, come on, a largemouth bass will destroy this thing. Pike, muskie, perch, you know, I mean, I can't think right now, but I imagine there's a ton of species that'll just devour this fly. It's a great little fly. And I promise you that this fly, like I said, if you Google search those essential saltwater flies, this is one of them. Super simple, super inexpensive to tie. I mean, I basically have thread and one material. You don't have to have flash. Flash I do because I can't imagine tying a fly without flash. That's not a slick willy fly. Get my little hair out of the way, best as I can. And now I'll put another drop of this super thick resin right between the eyes. That's all I've been doing. I did the top right between the eyes, and now I did the bottom right between the eyes. And really all this was is just to really lock in these eyes. Now I'm gonna switch to a little thinner consistency. So So now what do? I come back around, double check that everything is looking good, which it is. Everything is locked in hard. I knew that was never going to move. And I get a little bit thinner consistency resin. And what am I going to do? I'm going to go right onto the eye itself. Carefully. I want to get every little loose hair I can get off. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to put a drop on the eye and I'm going to carefully work it off the eye and onto the edge where we've applied resin. And what this does is it really makes the eyes bulletproof. I'm also putting a little bit on the knot itself, tiny amount. I'm using this long needle-like dispenser just to move everything around. And now we're going to use the laws of physics and we're going to give this sucker a spin in both directions. And when I spin this fly, I'm quite sure that what I'm doing is I'm just making the resin just become like a nice, even, beautiful layer. I mean, this looks awesome. This came out great. I'm super happy with this head. Super happy with this fly. Oh, I see a wild hair, but that guy's gonna go. Gonna lock this in really good. Super, super happy with this fly. This fly will definitely catch fish. The Tarpon Bunny. The Slick Willy Tarpon Bunny. I don't know if anybody else puts that flash underneath. I think that little bit of flash makes a difference. Plus, what I really like about putting the crystal flash there is it really keeps this fly from fouling. Now, you notice I didn't put a weed guard. This is a fly that I'm normally not casting into weeds. So I'm not really concerned about putting a weed guard on this particular fly. You notice I didn't put a weed guard on the orange one that I tied today. And I didn't put a weed guard on the gray fox that I tied today. And they look great. They have a great profile. They have this Zonker just wiggles like crazy in the water. It's a great little fly. Has to get wet to sink. It wants to float until it gets wet. But hope you enjoyed the fly. I'm gonna put this in my windowsill now and let it sit. It's you know, December 21st is the winter solstice, shortest day of the year. So I'm in Sweden. I don't get a lot of sunlight right now. It's dark. But even if it sat in the windowsill for 1 hour, you know, that's plenty to cure this fly. 10 minutes it'll probably be thoroughly cured. Hell, it's cured now. But I don't know, I've always just wanted to give it the extra. I don't mass produce flies. I don't sell flies. This is just for fun for me. So I'll put it in the windowsill and let it cure up. I really hope you guys enjoyed this fly. I hope you're having a cocktail with me. And you see that you're only limited by your imagination in colors. But I mean, come on, orange, chartreuse, this natural gray. These are killers. These are assassins. So don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and see you on the next video.